Far away.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, again, welcome, David, to Cohort 12's journey at Basecamp. I believe we're on what week are we on now?
It's week 8.
Week 8. Oh my gosh, that's going so fast. So I've already introduced you, David, to everyone, so everyone knows a little bit about who you are and your sort of background. But would you like to sort of take the floor and introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, just literally 2 seconds. My dog has got zoomies. I'm just going to put him outside. Literally near people, which means he decides now's the perfect time to go crazy.
Oh, bless.
And, if anyone's got a Cocker Spaniel, you'll have any idea of what these things are like.
Yep, I've got a Sprocker. I've got a Sprocker, and he goes insane.
Yeah, I think it's when he hears other voices. I don't know what it is. It just sparks him off. So yeah, now he's doing figure of eights around the house and kitchen. So, right. So, okay. So I work for Foot Asylum. Hopefully you all know who they are. My role is head of talent attraction and acquisition. And generally that means it's split across 4 key areas. One being talent attraction. So that's everything to do with marketing, our business as an employer, everything to do with EVP, how we attract candidates into the business, what our employer brand looks like, and then ultimately what channels we decide to look into and how we've moved from paid to organic structurally to where we're at now. Then talent acquisition as well. So that's everything that you would think about that focuses on recruitment processes that come into the business. Reward, everything to do with benefits, bonuses, salaries, benchmarking, stuff like that. And then I also do traditional HR stuff as well, but it tends to only be like complex HR stuff. So things like ER cases that are difficult and some other little bits and bobs, projects. I'm implementing a comm system into the business at the moment, which is one of the big projects I'm working on. So yeah, I guess not a traditional kind of TA person, but I would definitely say my background isn't very traditional either. So thinking about kind of like what you guys do, when I left school, I was a professional footballer. So I did that for 10 years. Whilst I played football, well, my mum's a scientist, so education was always really important for us in our household. So I went to uni with more UCAS points than anybody would ever need. Got like A levels in law, psychology, sociology, maths, and some other stuff as well, which says a lot about kind of why I was ready to go to kind of uni. I went in, I did a marketing degree, got a first in that, and that focused specifically around digital. And then from there, then I went to did a master's. Whilst I was doing that, I worked for a company called Saints and Sinners, who are a fashion brand. They were a small fashion brand. Did their full kind of digital marketing strategy alongside my master's, and it went really well, absolutely blew up, and it became really difficult to be a footballer and a student and a digital marketeer at the same time. So I was umming and ahhing about football. I was 28 at the time. I'd never had what I considered to be a real job before. And I used to do, when I was younger, I used to do some modeling, and I was doing a shoot for Adidas, and the marketing director went past and I said, I've got these skills, I've done this degree, I can code. So I taught myself to do some like front end development as well. So I had all these skills, and he was like, yeah, cool. But the role that I went into was a mix. So 2 days was digital marketing, 3 days was influencer. And I did that for Adidas, and then eventually it became more flowing into influencer. And then from there, then I was pretty much kind of all set that that was the route I was going to take, whether it be digital or influencer. It was one of the routes. One of my family members had a brain hemorrhage, so I had to move back from London to Chester, help support them with that. And yeah, so I said, oh, well, I'll stay up in the north just to be close whilst they went through an end of life pathway. And yeah, and I was umming and ahhing about what to do. I got offered loads of different jobs in marketing, or to be a developer, or work in digital. So I was kind of split across a range of different areas, and somehow ended up in HR. But I love it. And I think the kind of skills that I learned specifically when I was working in those early years of my professional career really helped shape, I guess, how I come at talent acquisition now. And I'll give you an example of something. When I first came to Foot Asylum, we had 70 applications across 40 jobs. I've put in marketing strategies and pieces around that. If you consider that to last week, we had 16,500 applications across about 110 jobs, of which 78% of those are organic applications. So they're people not going through job boards, but actually directly to our careers site. And then I've set up something else on the website, which allows people to engage with us in a different way. So you don't just submit your CV, you can tell us your favorite Spotify song, you can flow pieces around yourself, who you are as an individual. And so if you go to our career site, you'll see there's something called Connect there, and people can upload TikTok reels and just give yourself more opportunities to talk about yourself than maybe a CV, because I'm one of the few people that sits in a role that I do that thinks that CVs are a terrible example of who you are as an individual. So essentially, we've been through a long journey, but by putting the strategies in place and having a great kind of like HR director that allowed me to just go and do what I wanted to do at the time and give me a decent budget, meant that we're at a point now where really, I say my team aren't talent acquisition specialists anymore. They're storytellers, they're effective marketeers. And unfortunately, just because of the sheer number of people that want to work for us now, they're talent rejection specialists. So it's become like a bit of a kind of a switch in the dichotomy of what they are. But yeah, that's a bit of a condensed space info about who I am.
Wow. There's so many things that I want to like talk about with that, but I don't even know where to start. It's really interesting actually how you've navigated your way through that journey, and initially started off as a footballer, and how that you built connections, you've had to move about, you've had some things sort of come about in life that have, you had to uproot and move. So it's been interesting to hear about that, the way that you've navigated it. And now being on sort of the other side, where you're now bringing people into a business, particularly where I think we've already had Careers Week, where we've spoken about how difficult it can be, particularly in this market, and the sheer competitiveness of it all. So that's, it's great to sort of have those figures for people to know actually, like, it is competitive. There are a lot of people that are going for roles. But on the flip side, it's nice to hear that it's not all about CVs, and that you guys are invested in other areas of people's personalities and soft skills. And that's what we're really trying to encourage people to do, is to lean into those those more sort of creative applications. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Actually, I think we'll probably come to that later on. So
Yep.
I guess sort of you've already touched on a few bits for my next question in terms of like your struggles that you've had throughout your career journey. But if we were to talk about your sort of when you were working as an in your influencing marketing era, what would you say were your biggest struggles during that period?
Well, for me, I always say one of the advantages was that I wasn't driven by money because I was successful in a previous role. So that allowed one thing. And that's not to say that I came into it. I was really poor when I grew up. I was lucky that football came along. I was in a single parent household, living in women's refuges and all that kind of stuff. So a bit of a kind of like weird journey, really. But I didn't have the traditional struggles that a usual grad would from a financial standpoint. And that is going to be something that you have to kind of go through. I'll tell you now that my first salary in what I consider to be a real job was 17,200 in London, which was really challenging. And I can imagine if I was like just starting my career off, that would have been really, really difficult. And so you have to make a decision about the kind of business that you want to work for. And then also, is it going to pay for the life that you need to lead in order for you to do the best possible job you can? And I say this to people all the time. Some businesses will try to get people in and they'll say, well, they should just want to work for us. And we had this kind of at Foot Asylum a little bit when I joined there. And they had it at Adidas, where they think that people should just want to work for them. And so we try to bridge that gap in terms of like how we prepare young people for the world of work when they come into the business. And I don't mean young as in age, young as in their journey into that career. The biggest challenge outside of that for me, for influencer, was getting used to what it's really like to work in an office, how to effectively communicate in an office, and specifically with people that work in the business. Understanding the differentiation between different departments, how they work and correlate together, and then also the impact that you can have as an individual just coming into a company and what it really means to show your value. I think every business that's worth their weight in any kind of company should be thinking, well, how can we create an environment where people can add value and feel valued? And I think when you're deciding which business you want to work for, that's something to question when you get into the kind of interview processes. So in there, I was like able to differentiate myself pretty quickly. Obviously, having a background and being a sponsored athlete for Adidas, it helped. My very first day in influencer, what Adidas tend to do is they'll put you with someone that's high profile or something just to see how you get on with them. So my very first day, I was told, I went in after about half an hour of being shown my laptop and where to go and how to log in and whatever. They said, right, can you go and sit with some talent, please? And so I'm thinking, I'm going to go in and see maybe like a smaller kind of like low grade rapper or something like that. And it was Tom Hardy. And so I was like, what? Hi, dude. And he was just like, right, they've told me to give you a bit of a hard time, but I don't want to do that. This just shows what a lovely man he was. He said, so just get me a Diet Coke and say I was a bit prickly. So I cheers, dude. So I went and got him a thing and we ended up getting on dead well or whatever. But the thing was that then from that, then they told my bosses, oh yeah, he's really cool. And what happens in most of the time is that when you're working in influencer, a lot of the people, if they're like high level, what they don't want you to talk to them on the basis of who they are and what they are. They want to talk to you just as a person. So we got talking about what he was interested in. Obviously, the Adidas liked it because they were like, well, this guy's been an athlete for us and he's done all these little bits and bobs. So they were kind of, we could build this kind of like relationship quickly. But that didn't always mean things were rosy. So you might work with talent sometimes and they just don't correlate. I won't say who, but a famous singer speak down to someone. And I found that quite challenging to sit there. So, and one of the examples, so I went to that person and I said, listen, just so you know, you work for us, we've got you here, but technically you're an employee of this business. Now, my boss said to me, even though you're right, you've got to think about the impact. And for the brand, we've already paid this person if they decided to do one because of, we're filming an advert or whatever. So you're always running an influencer, this balance between keeping talent happy, but also staying true to who you are as an individual and the brand. And so what happens is in the long run, that particular singer ended up coming back to us and saying, oh, I'd like to spend more time with David because actually he's real. That's what the word they use, like he's real and whatever. So it worked in my favor, but it might not have done. But I think as long as you kind of like stick to the principles of, I guess, kind of what's important to you and you treat everyone with respect and manners, then you'll be flying. In terms of the specific challenges around the workload and workflow, I can tell you now, influencer is a hard work job because ultimately you're dealing with individuals and their needs change consistently. One example was we were doing a launch of sneakers with, I think it was Foot Locker with Chipmunk, and he had the wrong sneakers on. And so I had to literally, it was like end of the day and he was meant to be doing it at like 8 o'clock. I didn't need to be there. So I was like, oh, I'll just like set him. And then I get this message. So I have to stop what I'm doing, which was pretty boring anyway. It was CrossFit. So I'm just literally at CrossFit or whatever. So I leave CrossFit. I have to get across back to Covent Garden, get these sneakers in his size, which we couldn't get. Then we get back. So I've got him a pair of sneakers, they're a size bigger. And then he's saying he won't wear them because they're a size bigger. So they make his feet look big and all the rest of it. And we're like, dude, like you should have worn the right product when we gave it you and all the rest of it. So that's like where you just say sometimes the job comes first. In that you can do all the things. And I think with influencer, the principle, I guess, is that you can do everything perfectly. You can do your job to the absolute maximum, but you also need to give a little bit of leeway in the mindset that you are dealing with people and people get things wrong all the time. And you don't blame them. You just move quickly. Don't worry about spilt milk. You just get on with it and let's make sure that the product or the event or whatever it is goes out and is as successful as possible. And in the background, you'll be sat there with puffing your cheeks out with red faces because you've been running around like crazy, trying to make sure that everything else goes fine when Joe Bloggs walks out with his sunglasses on in the middle of the day to launch a pair of sneakers for the brand.
Sounds like you've got to have a lot of resilience if you're going to be working in influence marketing, but lots of patience, lots of resilience, and being able to keep you cool when you're around people like Tom Hardy, which I definitely would not. be able to do. I think this is probably a good time for us to open up for questions. So has anyone got a question? Feel free to pop your hand up or put one in the chat. Let me just go through to make sure I've not missed anything. Sarah, you got your hand up.
Hiya. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, did you have anything to do with the YouTube reality show, the Locked Up thing that Foot Asylum did?
Locked In, yeah, it's part of that. So we correlate so that's technically like a marketing process. And the reason that is, so when at the start of lockdown, like, is it 5 years now since lockdown? It feels like that, doesn't it? So we had a meeting across like all of the senior people in the business about where we could see, I guess, digital experiences. So traditionally, retail has been I see, I feel, I buy. So that's like you would walk in, you pick up a pair of trainers, you like them, you feel them, you buy them. Now it's I see, I feel, I'll Google where I can get it cheaper and then I'll buy it. So what we do is we wanted to create an environment where the symbiotic nature between people and their devices was as close as possible within our environment, and then also bring experiences closer together. So we at that time had said, right, what we need to do is build an entertainment brand that sits alongside our commercial brand, because what we want to do is bring the digital experience as close as possible. And so we could see when we'd done some little bits of content we were sharing out, we could see that people were engaged in some of the stuff that we'd done. Whether it was like we did our first above the line marketing campaign, which if people don't know what that means, it means we just did an advert on telly. So we did our first that, and that went really, really well. People were loving it. We put Harry Redknapp in a tech fleece tracksuit, and people were like raving about it and all the rest of it. So we decided that we were going to do something, and we felt like there was this space where we could use influencers who have their own media structure, but they're not necessarily correlated with brands. So we signed KSI as our first kind of like person. We recognized his kind of reach. And then also at the time, people thought that like gaming was a bit goofy, like Twitch was set up and all the rest of it. Not me, I'm a bit of a nerd, so I knew exactly who these people were, but there are people that saw that. We saw direct impact to them bringing people and influencers through our journey. But what we didn't want to do was go and get a load of like ready-made superstars in the business, because it wouldn't have worked in the structure we wanted. We wanted people to learn who these people were within the environment. So 5 years ago, we set up this idea that we wanted to become an entertainment brand and blur the lines between entertainment and retail and digital experiences, which we did. And obviously, you know about it, and it's gone really, really well for us. Some of
Oh, sorry, Dave. You've gone on mute. I can't. I didn't hear the last bit of that. Sorry.
Yeah, it said the host muted you. How dare you? Anyway, so then what had happened is so we'd kind of like decided that this was kind of where we wanted to go and kind of like build this alignment. And then people brought with them some followers and eyeballs and all the rest of it. Everything that the people wear on Locked In, we sell in our stores. Generally, its own brand product as well. So if you don't know, Foot Asylum also creates, we set up like a fashion house as well. We've got 32 different brands. So if you've seen things like Farina, Zavetti jackets, stuff like that, then we own all of that as well. We have fashion designers that design that in-house. So for us, what it meant that we had influencers with their own structure in an environment that we were controlling, wearing all of our product for what are technically nominal fees, and we controlled the mechanism around how we get that content out to people. So it's, from our perspective, think of it as a massive advert with different types of influencer, because if someone's associated with an influencer, they like that person for their content or whatever, then brilliant. And if they do really, really well, and we can see the data, we can look at it and say, oh, this person, we've had a direct correlation between either what they're wearing or how people are engaging with them, what the comments look like, and all the rest of it. We use tools for that. Then we'll sign them into a contract. And whether we had like, sometimes we have people from Love Island, like Jack Fowler, that just does product for us and might do the odd video. And then we have other people like Chunks and Philly who did really, really well for us on platform. And then Chunks actually got nabbed by another business, and we were really cool with that. We've never been a business that gets annoyed that people go other brands. They went to JD, and some people think that we're in this massive competition with JD, but they're a huge international global business. We're literally just UK based, apart from one other store. We're kind of like growing exponentially, and we're doing it, but we don't get annoyed about it. Like Chunks was offered a 7-figure deal. So we're not going to be kind of like competing with that. We pay nowhere near that. Our principle is we'll platform people, and if you want to work with us, then great. And if not, then that's all good, you know, off and away. And so yes, I was involved in the principal structure of Locked In, and then obviously thinking about the role that I do now, we weave that through all of our strategy with traction and I guess kind of like employer branding that sits and flows with that.
Definitely. I just want to add, like, I've never seen high street brand do something like that, because obviously that's how sort of Football Asylum started, and I was really impressed. I was kind of like, oh, this is, and it was like pure entertainment as well. It's a bit more of a cheeky question. I just wanted to just finish off. What was kind of, if you can say, the overall budget really that was thrown around for that? I know obviously you said like 7 figures is like far more than would be offered, but like, how did you go about getting those influencers to come on? Because there would have been some form of compensation in there, I'm guessing.
Well, so it's structured 2 ways. So some get a flat fee if they're bigger. They'll tend to want a flat fee. Others get paid per day. And it's when you decide if you're going to run an influencer campaign, you might have a budget that's set there. But if someone brilliant comes along and you think that they can have like a really big influence, then you have to make a conscious decision from a business perspective about what your ROI is. And that's what everything to do with influencer is. It's ROI. And that's not always based on transactional value, but also like eyeballs or reach or flow. So like you might want someone that's able to drive traffic into specific careers, specific websites, or whatever it might be. It's up to you how you decide that you want to utilize them. And they have to be on board with it as well. But ultimately, that's why you have good people in the business. And I think we have like a moniker when it comes to anything to do with stuff like this. And it's like, you just be honest and don't be a dick. And then you're generally all right. In terms of like the money, I've seen places where they'll go, oh, we'll just put an extra 10 grand into this or an extra 20. And then it doesn't make it profitable anymore. And I think there's a part of influencer that is commercial, and it's up to people that work in influencer to be able to go and articulate to their managers and the directors of marketing and wherever else that by doing this, we will see a benefit that looks like X and we'll invest Y time. And then you're hoping that sales comes in Z, but ultimately anything to do with marketing sometimes, especially if you do something that's a bit fractious and a bit disruptive, it's always a bit of testing sometimes, and you try stuff, and the best places try stuff and they don't cry over spilt milk. They just get on, move, brush yourself off and go to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Nick, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Hi, David. I just wondered about, like, because I think it's reassuring to hear that you've come from a completely different career to where you are now, but I just wondered, like, about your experiences of that transition into a different career, and whether you feel that would be completely different now, given the kind of competition for roles and things like that. Do you feel that would be different? What advice would you give?
Well, I always say when people talk to me about like the transition, I took the route that I did because I needed to expedite my career as quickly as possible. I always felt like 10 years behind everybody else. So whilst I created financial security for myself, if I went into an interview and I'm sat there with people who have had, you know, let's say they've done like placement years or something whilst they've been in uni, or someone that's got experience of working in a professional environment, there was definitely levels of like, imposter syndrome that would sit there with me, where I'd be sat there thinking like, oh, I'm not as good as that person, or they seem way better for it. And ultimately, the way I shifted that was I would change my mindset from being what am I able to deliver now versus what is my potential. So it seems like a simple idea, but fundamentally, how do you get to the situation where you're able to articulate to your future employer or whoever it is that you do, or whatever, maybe you set your own business up, whatever it is, but how do you articulate to the point where you say, well, actually, this is what I can deliver now, but my potential is by far outweighs this. And I think when you're going into kind of like any process, like you said, it's competitive at the moment, and it is for us, but only in certain areas. But like if I put a social media executive role out, we have to turn it off in 24 hours because just the sheer number of people that are applying. However, what we find is that a lot of people that are applying are just clicking quick apply. They're not reading the advert specifically. They're not adding things. So the people that are really good understand, they've done loads of research. They understand our consumer. They understand what we're looking for. They understand how we communicate with our people. They understand who Foot Asylum is. They understand the brands that we sell. And then when they come into having conversations with us, or even when they articulate their cover letter or an upload of a reel or whatever it might be, we can see that. Like you can, if I won't show you, but I could show you if I went into our system. There was a person that we placed recently who is a solicitor, and a solicitor is usually quite a stiff role, very kind of like, I guess traditionally would be seen as like a classist structural, and we work hard with ED&I to make sure that we create kind of like equity rather than equality, which is what I kind of like, it's a big buzzword at the moment. But one of the things was this particular person spoke about what we ask these all these random questions, and it's up to them if they decide to apply. And so she'd answered what her secret power was. She told us that she met the Queen and had flashing roller lights on her feet. She sent to us her favorite song on Spotify, which was Drake, which all amalgamates into her process. She uploaded a video of herself. She told us about what she understood about our consumers, our customers. She said she buys stuff from there. She understood Nike's background. She knew that Champion was the first company to create a hoodie. Like, she knew all of this stuff, but she's a solicitor dealing in like specifically in litigation. So on paper, she wasn't the best candidate, but she platformed herself in such a way that we thought this person looks brilliant for who we are as a business. She then came into the process and was so buoyant and buzzing about it as an opportunity that she absolutely smashed all of the perfect candidates out of the way. And I mean, people that had worked in retail or worked in fashion that were solicitors couldn't match up to her because she was super passionate. And I think that's one thing, making sure that you platform yourself the best you can and talk about your potential. And the other thing is to really prepare effectively when you're going through it. I know from my time playing football, when my contracts used to come up, I used to think, God, what if I don't get another contract? Where am I going to go? Luckily, things went that way. But you got to think, I suppose, when you're there, like when you come to the, say someone offers you an opportunity, you got to think, well, is this really the one that's going to help me progress either as quickly as possible or teach me as much as I need to do? And I remember I read a quote once and it said, if someone asks you if you can do something, say yes and learn. And I think, like, obviously, we're not talking brain surgery here. Don't try that. But if it's within the realms of what you've got, go away and kind of like learn about it. Take the opportunity to decide whether you think it is truly available and truly suitable for who you are as a person. Now, talking about me personally, how I transitioned, moving from football into a professional environment was the hardest, because obviously being in sport, I used to finish work at 2:00 every day. You generally don't really know what to do with yourself. Your body, you're meant to be just resting your body and then waiting for the next day. Like I said earlier, just kept going to college. So I kept doing different courses and whatever else in the local areas to the clubs that I played in. But other lads didn't do that. And so then shifting from finishing work at 2 every day to then doing 8:00 in the morning till 5:30. I remember I was absolutely knackered. I couldn't believe how tired I was. I was like, I haven't even done anything. I've been sat at a desk all day. But that was one of the main kind of problems. And then secondarily, then when I moved from that and then went into talent, that came about through one of my friends working in talent. And they said, I think you'd be well suited for it. And there was a part of my roles that hadn't been, that I have to use now, where it was related around kind of empathy and thinking specifically about individuals and people rather than necessarily thinking commercially and impact. So I had to shift from that mindset then when I went into talent. But luckily, I always say that I'm really lucky that I was probably the right person at the right time. When I went into talent, no one was using digital as a method for speaking to customers and consumers and whatever else. And in my case, the customer at that point was either potential employees or current people that we had working in our company. So, yeah, I think I was probably lucky But at the same time, you'd say, well, all the time that I spent going to college and doing all of the learning about digital and development and marketing and all the rest of it helped get to the point where I'm at now, which really, it can sometimes feel for everybody that when you take small steps, it can feel like it's not taking you to your final journey, but every long journey starts with the smallest step first. So just keep on the principle that if you know what you want and you know how you want to progress, then move on that way, and you'll be off. Obviously, it's easy for me to say, but as long as you can stay resilient, driven, ambitious, and motivated, then things will come your way. Sorry, as you can tell, I don't shut the hell up.
No, this is all fantastic advice. Thank you, David. Jack has asked a question in the chat. How did you add value when you first started in a large company? And would there be anything that you would have done differently?
So I added value by making myself as available for everybody as possible. So I was constantly telling people, is there anything I can do to help? I'd like to get closer to you, understand how you do this. How do you contact influencers? What do we do? I literally went at it every time asking questions. Now, you can feel a bit goofy sometimes asking questions about things all the time. I went into the department and there were people doing different things. They specifically wanted me to work with either music, like specifically like grime artists, or movie, like films and TV, stuff like that. That's where they wanted me to sit. But I was keen to kind of get as much skill as possible. So I went and got close with other areas of the business, including outside of influencer as well. But I went to, there's a guy that's really famous within the Adidas sphere called a guy called Gary Aspen. He's actually created his own range now. He's from Blackburn, so he's like a proper northerner, but like has really intrinsically become part of who Adidas are as a business and represents things like Oasis and Stone Roses, that terrace culture space. And I didn't necessarily know much about that, nor was I technically interested in it. But what I was really interested in was how can I potentially add value to that space? So I went and worked with Gary as closely as possible. Every time he was in the office, I would ask if I could spend some time with him. And I would say in 99% of the times, people were really open to helping you and having you sit closely to them. Ultimately, adding value is ultimately dictated by the business itself, by giving you a platform to be able to trust you to do things. And so from my perspective, I was saying, well, the first thing I want to do is get as close to these people so they understand what my skills are, what my weaknesses are, and then utilize their skills to help me develop as quickly as possible so that I can add value as quickly as possible. If that answers what you want.
I think so. Is that okay, Jack? But yeah, no, it sounds like being okay with being exposed. How can I say this without it sounding weird? Not exposing yourself, but being like, open to just being a bit of a sponge, really, being able to take all that information in, just listening to every conversation as much as you can, try not to kind of like put yourself in a corner and not be heard, I guess, being quite bold with it.
Yeah, just be proactive. Like you think about it when you go into a business, specifically when you're quite new into either a company or the people that work within there. Just go be proactive. Like, don't have any ego. Don't think that their expectations of you are going to be really high or anything like that. If you've been truly kind of like through the journey about who you are and what you want to do, no employer that's worth their salt is going to look at someone who's coming and asking questions and trying to be as proactive as possible, look at that person and go, oh, they're annoying, or they're not really adding value. Like, they're going to go, yeah, no, like, I'm going to get it. And then the next time something comes up, I'll tell you an example of something. There was an advert being filmed when I joined Adidas. I was really early on, so I wouldn't have really been involved in any decent campaigns. But David Beckham was my favourite footballer, and I knew that we were filming for the Olympics adverts when the Olympics were in London. So I was doing some work with Example, if any of you know who Example is, the rapper and musician. And he said to me, oh, I'm going to be doing this bit with David Beckham. I said, well, tell my boss that you need me there so I can come down. And he was like, yeah. So he went to my boss and then went, look, we've got to have David there. He's brilliant. And I think he'll get on with Bex and all the rest of it. And then, so, yeah, then the next thing is like, I get this call and they're like, yeah, we just need you to come to this shoot. It's going to be blah, blah, blah. And then I get down there and then I met him and it was like awesome. But that wouldn't have happened if I'd have just sat there and done nothing. But because I knew it was coming and I'd worked hard on the relationship in the first place, I was able to, some might say, manipulate myself into the environment so I could go meet him. Because being sponsored by like Adidas, I always thought like, oh yeah, I'll meet him all the time. And I never met him once. Plus he moved to Real Madrid anyway, so I never got to see him. But yeah, it was great.
Yeah, so even I feel like there's such an emphasis on networking your way into roles, but actually it's being able to network yourself within your role that can get even more opportunities for yourself. Like you say, that can add more value. And just saying yes to opportunities and being brave, I think, is a really important message there. Jada has asked, what do you look for when scouting for influencers for your campaigns? Do you go for more engagement / audience or aesthetic or type of content they create? And do you work with nano influencers at all?
It's all of those things plus more. So when we're looking, there's no one size fits all on an influencer. We're not, otherwise you end up, if you've heard the word echo chamber before, you end up in an environment where what you're doing is dictating to your consumer what they want to see. And you definitely don't want that. We want to be creative and we want to be trendsetters and leaders and influencing the journey. But there's a difference between influencing and strongholding. So with that, let's say we go, right, like for instance, we do really well with grime artists, but only in certain cities. So grime artists does really well in London. They do really well in Newcastle. They do really well in Manchester. But if we go and drop, I don't know, Freddo in Carlisle, do you think that we're going to be absolutely smash full of people down at the store, like ready to come meet Freddo? Like, no, it's not indicative of the kind of environment. So we take a range of different things into factor. Now, if I was to change that and I said, in Carlisle, we're going to drop Danny Aaron's and Tennessee there, all of a sudden we'd be absolutely rammed. Not the chocolate frog, no. That's Freddo the chocolate frog there, but no. And that's a bad time to say that because I haven't had my dinner yet. But yeah, if we were to drop, so what we do specifically when we're scouting for influencers, generally we'll look to either go directly to the source, who they are and what they do, or we'll use a third party, because by using a third party, we can remove ourselves from any risk. So sometimes we have people that work for us that are bordering on lines of maybe being a bit sketchy, or they can be a little bit more truculent in the media and whatever it might be, but they might be really good for some of the brands that we have. So what we can do by utilizing a third party is our relationships with the third party and not with the artist directly. So there have been examples of people where they've said to us, we're not, I don't know, like the artist might go off on one and they've got cut. Let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. All right, here's an example of something. So one of our influencers, I won't say who, was wearing a tactical vest. So if you remember, maybe about a year and a half ago, wearing tactical vests over a hoodie was kind of like a cool thing to do. One of our influencers was wearing one in a music video that they obviously sourced from Foot Asylum because it was one of our brands. Somebody went and bought it and then got into a knife fight in Nottingham. And then the BBC turned up at our store in Nottingham asking us why we're selling bulletproof or stab-proof vests at the store. So now imagine being us there. Firstly, it's obviously not sold as that. It's a utility vest. It's actually for fishing, technically. That's what they're for. But they just ended up in fashion. Utility was like a big thing. Secondarily, we need to differentiate ourselves from the artist there, because we're not in any way like saying knife crime's good, but in his rap song, he is saying that he's involved in knife crime. Then thirdly, our product in store is being sold in there, but at no point is it advertised as that's the product that they can buy. So imagine us now, we're sat there, we're going, Jesus Christ, like we're having to defend either ourselves or the artist. That would make things way more difficult. Technically, we just defended ourselves because we say, well, we sell this product, it's here. How this rapper talks about it in their sphere, and then how that person then, I guess, kind of like takes that information and then correlates it out. It's not our responsibility. So we separate ourselves from that. But if we'd have owned that relationship, we would have had to put a whole big defense out and all the rest of it. But ultimately, we didn't need to anyway. And quite frankly, who the hell thinks that you can go buy stab-proof vests in Foot Asylum anyway? Like, we're definitely not that business, but people do that. And I think that's what the kind of like the BBC was reporting on and all the rest of it. So that becomes, it moves into PR then, and then you're doing crisis management as it sits around it. So when we decide who we're using to shorten that, when we decide to use influencers, we're not afraid to use people if they're a bit edgy. What we are keen to do is make sure that we're protected in all ways, that we consider ROI, and then also that the person that we're working with correlates. So if we're launching a sportswear product, getting someone like Ben Chilwell, who's a Chelsea player, involved, that works brilliantly. We're not going to be using a grime artist for a sportswear range. It wouldn't really work.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. What do you love the most about working at Foot Asylum?
Well, we're a really creative environment. Like, one of the business that I worked for before was a huge corporate business. I had teams in Germany, Holland, Dubai, Houston, Calgary. So I was doing loads of traveling, and it was super corporate and really strict in the rules. And I found myself curtailed all the time. I didn't necessarily want to come to Foot Asylum. So the way that I ended up there was they were looking for a head of talent. And someone in there, I'd been asked to go join Foot Asylum a couple of times in the past in the marketing department. But I'd made my decision that talent was the route that I was going to take. So I'd kind of like said no, like this is the route I want to take. Anyway, somebody within Foot Asylum then went to the HR director and was like, I know this guy, he's got a background of marketing, digital, and he understands fashion. He's doing really well in where he's at. Have a chat with him. I went to meet her, and what I thought was me helping her like kind of frame out what the role needs to look like was actually her just interviewing me. But I didn't know that. So then she came back to me, and it was a significant drop in salary. You know, I'll tell you that it was over £60,000 difference in the jobs. But for me, I was like, well, what was really important was, how am I going to come in and contribute? And so I took a significant pay cut on the basis that that would develop. I asked them to pay for my CIPD qualifications, which are the highest level of HR qualifications, which they did do as well. And then the other thing that I said was I had to have free reign to be able to market it effectively. And so in the first month, it was really difficult because marketing owned the employer brand piece, and it was terrible because they're thinking commercially all the time. So they're like, apply for jobs for us, here's 10% off. So you'd be like, well, what the hell are they trying to do to me here? So then people would have a negative reaction to that, because if you've ever walked down the street and seen someone wearing a big red bib saying whatever charity across the front, even though you know you can contribute to someone, you're sat there going, Jesus, let me get away from this person. It's just a natural reaction. And it's the same principle when you put in EVP and employer branding out there. So we had the same kind of like reaction. So like I said, where we're at now, we've had significant change. So the best thing about working at Foot Asylum is that we're innovators. We try stuff. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't matter. We dust ourselves off and go again. It's a super creative environment where everybody really gets on. We feel like we've got shared goals. And the business is really good at articulating about where we're going and what we're trying to do. And I think that's kind of a lucky part. I've been there for 6 and a bit years now. I'm not the kind of person that would stay in a business if I felt that I wasn't A, contributing, and B, feeling like I was still developing. So it's been an amazing role. It's been an amazing journey that we've been on. And luckily for me, because the business has been growing exponentially, it's meant there's always new challenges.
Jasmine's asked a question quite similar to what we've already talked about. But how did you know which influencers were best suited for your YouTube Foot Asylum series, and what was the process like?
Well, we highlight anyway, like I said to you, the first thing, like what we're really looking for is what does the person, or let's say, like, let's just pick any person, like Danny Aarons is an easy example. So he got like a big reach from just doing FIFA pack openings and playing FIFA on Twitch, but he had really big reach. So we're sat there going, well, is his audience the kind of person that's shopping in Foot Asylum? That's the first thing. Secondarily, we look at him and go, do we think he has the potential to do content creation? So then you you've got those 2 points that sit there. Then he'll have a manager, or he'll have some kind of like representation. So then we either use a third party, or we'll go to them direct and we'll say, like, how do we want to, is this person interested in coming into Locked In? The series looks like this. Quite luckily, all of the influencers that we spoke to have been aware of it, obviously, other than the first lot that came in. And it's been seen as like a good stepping stone for people who are working in this space, in content creation. They've seen it as a good stepping stone for their career or development, because sometimes when you're doing content creation, the decisions that you make can be quite difficult. You can have a few brands come in with you, and then all of a sudden you think, right, well, I'm going to go with them because I think that they're the best brand, or they align with me. But what we do that's really important is when we speak to influencers, we make sure that they're aware of what it means for us. So what it means for us that they're going to come work for us, and then it's up to them what route they take and how they go for it. If they do really well with us and they get some good content and all the rest of it, then we'll put them on like a contract that will earn a period of time. But we don't tie people in. So we don't have influencers that are sat there, right, and we go, you're Foot Asylum only. If people want to do things with other places, that's cool. We're not kind of like inhibitive in any way. And I think that says a lot about who we are as a business. Then when influencers will speak about having worked with Foot Asylum, no one's got any negative stories to tell, really, because ultimately all we're doing is we're creating an environment for them to do their best work, and then we'll be the beneficiaries of that.
And then we've got one last question. What's your opinion on AI within digital marketing?
My opinion is it's coming. And actually, I think you'd be surprised that it's probably already woven within everything that we do. I'll give you an example of something that we do. And we use a company called Peak, who are AI specialists. And we gather information all the time. We've got loads of data, whether it's behavior on our careers site, behavior on our commercial site, pick any channel that you're touching points with Foot Asylum. So from there, then we will have a tool that will look at everyone's behavior, and it will correlate sales and services to you based on the behaviors you have. So I'll give you an example. If someone's obviously a student, then what AI can do is we can tailor pathways, knowing when people get the release from Student Loans Company. We can tailor adverts that will go into their feeds. And then from there, let's say they've looked at, I don't know, they might have looked on a different website, but we've got a cookie tracking it. They might have looked at a pair of sneakers. And so then what we do then is we'll feed that we sell that sneaker into their social channels or whatever it might be. They're obviously paid channels. And then from there, then when the release comes, they'll have more touch points, whether it be through CRM or whatever. It's looking specifically at the behavior of the individual and creating a completely customized marketing campaign around that individual. That is all done completely by AI. And so from our perspective, we just say, this is the campaign we want to run. It's going to work like this. Every business is doing that at all times. There might be times where you go, what? I was just talking about waffles and all of a sudden I got an advert through my phone about waffles. Well, yeah, if you don't have closed accounts, some of the apps are listening. I think what would be interesting is if any of you all use TikTok, just have a look at what TikTok is actually allowed to do on your phone when you give it permissions to use it, because it's listening and it's watching. It watches keystrokes on your phone. So if you type in Nike Air Max 2, it can work out that you've typed Nike Air Max 2. Then with that data, then they can share that to their third parties, which then go to all the AI bots, and then it comes back, and all of a sudden you're seeing these Air Max 2 everywhere you go, and what you see. Now, for us, we weren't quite sure about what this impact was going to be. If we run a traditional digital marketing campaign, we might have seen an uplift of something about 150%. When we did the AI uplift, it was in the thousands of percent. It was ridiculous. And times that by all of the different percentages of aspects that AI can actually have an impact, then you get a bare idea, I suppose, of what the potential of AI is. So do I think AI is going to be an intrinsic part of digital marketing? It already is. It's going to be even more important as we go through journeys. There'll be times where something that we were working on was around geo-targeting. So if you've looked at, say, a pair of sneakers and you're walking through any shopping centre that's near you, and you have those digital boards, don't you, in every board? We've got it where we can work out from your phone where you are comparatively to where you are to the store, and that digital board can change and fire up an advert specifically to you saying, David, if you come down into store now, we'll give you 10% off those trainers you've been looking at. Now we're capable of doing that right now. We don't do it yet, but there will be other businesses doing that. So when you're walking down the street and you think, oh God, I've been thinking about Millie's cookies all day, and all of a sudden an advert for Millie's cookies comes up on those digital boards, it might be a bit closer than you think.
My God, that's terrifying. That's just blown my mind. Ooh, love AI, but it also, yeah, everyone's saying, oh my God, that's wild, scary.
Well, the thing is, don't be worried about it. It's going to make life easier. It feels, when something new comes along, everything can feel a little bit like scary. But from a brand's perspective, as long as you're doing things in the right way and ethically, then there isn't problems. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be some that do. If you got a business that's struggling, and honestly, when I worked in digital, we used to do things that would stitch other companies up all the time. There used to be things called black hat marketing, where, so I'll give you an example, like PPC, for instance, if you all know what PPC is. When I was working in PPC, if we knew that Nike were doing a massive launch of, say, Air Max 20, like we'll call it that, then we would just bid on the PPC name on Google to get that as high as possible, and then get everyone in the digital department to just go on and log off, go on and log off, go on and log off, and just keep charging them. And all of a sudden they'd have a massive bill for like 60 grand. There'd be times where previously, if I wanted a high result from an SEO perspective, I would have, in every spot that you can see that's a white screen, I would have keywords just in there. So you wouldn't even see it. But so you'd just be looking at it going, like I'm on, davidnottage.com, but actually all around the outside, I might have sneakers, t-shirt, sneakers, t-shirt, and driving people all in there, because then when Google does an SEO result, previously, before it introduced Penguin, which is like the update, that's what used to happen. And then loads of companies got banned for it for a little bit. They got like this little ban for like 6 months, so they wouldn't show up as Google results. So there's loads of stuff that goes on in marketing all the time. It's not all perfect, and it's not all like kind of flowers, but generally, I can talk from the perspective of us as a business, we would never, ever do anything that bordered on, contentious, because our actual brand and brand integrity is extremely important for us.
Speaking of AI, how do you keep up with all of that? Like, do you do courses yourself, or is it just things that you pick up within the business, things that you learn as you go? Like, how have you been able to, like, throughout your career, keep up to date with all this new found technology?
I'm a nerd, that's one. Two, I speak at a lot of events, and I'm always keen to hear people talk who know more about me than things, and they're specialists in their areas. I'm in something called the RL 100, which is like the top 100 recruitment leaders in the UK. And so I get the opportunity to speak to different companies, different people, different spaces. And it's twofold, really. One's for me to learn as much as possible. And two, can any of these things have an impact on us as a business from the space that I work within? And so AI can deal with, you'll see there's loads of people that are doing like AI CV reads, or you can have an interview with a robot and it just films you and then someone's reading it. Personally, I'm not a fan of this kind of stuff, because I think that the number one thing is to make sure that humans are doing the judgment work, not a bot. But it might get to the point where we all end up doing our interviews through AI bots. In fact, actually, when I was talking at an event the other day, like 2 days ago, somebody said to me that in their mind, AI will assess. You will literally go into in their mind, they were like, you go into a web page, you say, I'm looking for a new role, and it will just find you all of the jobs that you're suitable for instantly, because the employers will have decided that this is it. And so you won't even necessarily have interviews. You'll just shift from job to job to job based on what your needs and their needs are, which was an interesting idea, because I think from my perspective, I was instantly like, no way. Like, we'd always all want the person to come in, and he was like, you're thinking too linear. And he was like, the idea, if you think, instead of thinking like it's a straight line, think of it as a box that collapses in and out of itself. And so information can be manipulated in and out all the time. And so your potential skills and experience could be really valuable to someone that would either never see you or you would never see them. And they were like, so what AI will do is build the bridge between all of those different facets and factors.
Wowie. We've got some questions still on the chat, and Jack's got your hand up, Jack. Naya and Georgia and David, have you got time for any more questions, or do you?
I can stay on till half past.
Oh, Naya and G, what do you think? Got time for a couple more?
Take the ones that are in the chat and obviously Jack's, and then we can wrap up, and then that'll give us enough time.
Oh, Jack, where have you gone?
Well, yeah, I was just, mine's more of a, I did a question in the chat, but this is more
Dude, you're coming from
comment.
a motherboard here. You look
You
like
what?
you're coming from a motherboard.
Nah. Yeah, my comment was about when you were talking about the AI. I just thought about the biggest advantage I see is the scalability
Yep.
of the AI being able to scale. Do you see that as being a key benefit for like a large business for yourselves? Particularly when you were talking about that growth from the AI that you did with the paid ads was really interesting. Could you give us some data?
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of what the potential of AI is, it's going to be limited by us as a business, not by AI itself. AI has the potential to do so much more. There might be times in the future, I can imagine, where an SME becomes massive and you're like sat there going, well, what have they done? And I've done it. And it's completely driven by an AI bot, a tool that created the full strategy and how it goes. But the number one thing is you have to have something that consumers want. And so you got to make sure that your product's right. And it's all cyclical. Like, so for us, for instance, one of the advantages is that we're technically a marketplace. We sell our own products as well, as I said earlier, but we're a marketplace. So if Nike comes out of trend and Adidas comes into trend, then it's easy for us. We just shift and put that product in store. We give the customers what they want. And the advantage of AI, there's a saying that you meet the customer where they are. So if a customer's wanting to go on a phone, if they wanted to go on a laptop, if they want to go in person, if they want to go whatever channel, let's say in the future they just have a little digital screen that's working off their glasses, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that we meet the consumer where they want, and we want to make it as easy as possible for them to get the product as succinctly as possible. And also, we want to make sure that the tools that we put into place are allowing them to feel it's experiential. So an example of that is that when we launched a pair of Jordans in one of our stores, we tried something out where we had an augmented reality that sat in the app. And if you went over to these new Jordans, you could turn your phone up and you would see Michael Jordan dunking on you. And it would smack right down straight onto the trainers. And people loved it. They were like, this is amazing. The amount of sales that we had off the back of it because of that augmented reality. Now, imagine that being a more joined up process. So instead of it being foot aside and sending you the email, it's a digital image of Michael Jordan coming to you saying, right, my new Jordans are launching. And if you come down, I'll dunk specifically into your sneaker that you buy. And so we've got all these ideas about what the potential of AI is and what it wants, but ultimately it's going to be driven, one, by the customer or the consumer, two, by the data and the data sets that lie. Because from a big business perspective, everything that we do, for all the fun stuff and cool stuff, we're a data-driven tech business. And everything that we do, we make data-driven commercial decisions at all levels. And AI allows us to, like you said earlier, scale in a way that we can't do generally. And it also allows us to do things in a creative way that allows us to hit significant numbers of people in a way that's personalized that it'd be very difficult for us to do otherwise.
Yeah, cool. And then my question in the chat was basically, what was the best lead magnet for getting signups that you've had in your business?
Well, when you say lead magnet, as in like transactional sales?
Yeah, it can be, or just signing up to an emailing list. Either.
Well, email lists are generally built from people that are already consumers. So to get them to bounce back, we do a range of different like CRM pieces that will allow like they're generally strategies that are generally you'll hear the word touch points, and they'll use touch points to get back in touch with people, whether it's to say, what have you done here? But if they've got our app, that's where some of the data can be used. So we can see their behavior. They can see what they look at, what they've put into baskets previously and not bought. We can see, we can upsell products. So if somebody's been, I don't know, if they bought a pair of trainers, we know that there's a specific type of socks that will go with that. So we can upsell that product that sits on the page that maybe if you're a first-time person, you would never have seen that before. So as I was saying earlier, if you think about customized consumer journeys, then ultimately, whether it's CRM or whatever generational channel that we use, because we don't just use one. If you were to ask me what the absolute best is, then I would probably say COVID, because everybody shopped online. That was the biggest. We saw the biggest growth in e-commerce there than we've ever seen before, and it had a significant impact on the wider sphere of commerce anyway. Because what happened is, when businesses didn't have effective e-commerce strategies, they went crazy because they weren't transacting anymore, and businesses like us made hay while the sun shined. But then all of the marketplace for candidates went crazy. Like developers were getting overpaid, and or they'd have like all of these like development camps and stuff like that. And now there's like quite a challenge for developers to get an opportunity, because it's really fat at that middle ground. So you've got juniors and you've got seniors, but you've got loads of candidates sat in this space. And so post-COVID, everyone went crazy paying people with a year's experience 45 grand. And now those people are having to take pay cuts to go to new jobs. So this is when I was saying earlier about when you make a decision about who you want to work for, just make sure you fully research what it is they're offering, what you can do, how you can add value, because ultimately there'll be a time where someone turns around and says, is so-and-so adding value there?
Amazing. And then we've got one last question. Any advice on how I can combine sports photography / filmmaking experience with marketing and education and approach to sport brands for a position or get freelance projects?
That's a tough one. And the reason being is because you're creating a finite space for yourself to work within. Now, aspirationally, you might say, well, that's where I want to be, and that's what I want to be doing. But what I would say was in the first instance, you should look at every opportunity as a chance to build up your portfolio. For us, for instance, when we look for photographers, we want people that understand the kind of shoots that we do, but we want people to be dynamic and be able to do different types of things as well. The other element of things is that sometimes, particularly with photography, there's a romanticized idea about what that job is. And so for us, if someone's going on a shoot, right, so they'll see, okay, well, Foot Asylum are out in Ibiza and they're doing like shoots in Ibiza and they're working with X influencer and all the rest of it. The reality is the photographers are up at 6 a.m. They've been shooting all day, every day. They might have to spend 6 hours shooting a sneaker on a rock, and they're just doing different angles. The light might change, whatever it might be. And so and then you're more senior you become, you go through that journey. Now, my advice, if you wanted to reach out to brands and the Gap, is do that and be consistent. From our perspective, if you send something like that to me, I'll pass it to one of my team or whatever, but that wouldn't necessarily get you in because I'm so disconnected from there. What I would be doing if I was you is I'd just approach specific people. So if I was on LinkedIn, for instance, and I'm looking there and I'm seeing people are posting regular content about the kind of stuff they're doing. So I would follow all the photographers at Foot Asylum, and then I would see who's posting stuff consistently. And then maybe, let's say Tom in our photography department, I might send them in a message and say, I'm really, I guess, kind of excited about the work that you do. The kind of stuff you're doing is the kind of stuff I'm interested in. Would I be able to come in for an hour and have a chat with you about it? Or would I be able to have a shadow day with you? Or whatever it might be. No person's going to look at that and go, they might say, oh, I'm really busy actually at the moment or whatever. No one's going to go, oh, I'm just going to ignore this guy because he's asking me for all the help in the world or whatever. It's not that. I think generally people want to help and give people an opportunity. But the point is that when you've done that with a few different clients, you'll be the person that they think of next for a freelance opportunity. Or alternatively, when a permanent opportunity comes up, you might have done some stuff that works for them, because what people want to see is that someone's driven, ambitious, motivated, cares about the work that they do and understands what they're trying to do in the first place. There's something in the photography world that they use called the eye. They like this word, the eye. And I'm absolutely useless at it because I'm not creative. I'm just really good at doing things from A to B and doing it efficiently. So I think everyone's work's amazing. And then I have people that work for me that are creative and they go, no, this isn't right. It doesn't correlate and all the rest of it. But if you're able to look at the kind of stuff that people are putting out and posting, it'll give you an opportunity to say, okay, well, maybe I should correlate my portfolio to look like this, or these are the kind of shoots that I could do. I saw someone got an opportunity with us for a placement, and they'd sent an image of a product that we'd done. It'd been retouched and gone out, but they said, oh, I think it would have looked cool if it was like this. And it was basically a sneaker launch, but they put it into a puddle literally opposite the Hilton in Manchester, and they lifted the sneaker up and they caught a shot where the water was dripping off the sneaker right down into the Hilton, and they literally etched in Manchester into the kind of like side of it there, which just correlated so well for us as a brand. So they ended up getting an opportunity to come to a placement. That was great, went fine. They got another job elsewhere, and now they've come back and they're junior photographer in the business. So
this is all brilliant, because this is exactly what we recommend to do during Careers Week. And it's the kind of like think outside the box, isn't it? It's not just a case of filling in an application and that's it. It's putting yourself out there, connecting with people that are like-minded in the business, being open to doing some free work, some shadowing opportunities, and then getting creative and like, spending some time just making your own sort of passion projects and things like that. So that's all such fantastic advice. Thank you so much, David, for all of that.
I just have one more thing on that as well. Just when you get into these circumstances or these opportunities, guys, like I'll tell you, when I did that piece of work for Saints and Sinners, that was a 18-month project and I didn't get paid for that. But they had amazing results of it. They offered me a permanent job to be digital marketing manager. So what they do is give me clothes instead. So that's how it came about. But the brand blew up and it went brilliantly and it's flying now. But ultimately, what I would say is that there's times where you can feel like, oh, well, I should be getting paid for this. And don't be silly. Like if someone's taking the mick, like if you're working like significant hours, then make a decision about whether that's right for you or not. But if you're in a situation where you're learning, then sometimes taking a little bit of free work doesn't necessarily harm anyone.
Definitely, yeah. I think if you're in a position where you can do that, I think it's certainly worth investigating. It's all experience and that, and also it's quite a nice little it's kind of like a try before you buy as well. You get a bit of an insight into a business and what that role could look like before you're totally committed to it. Like an inside perspective, which you would never normally have. So no, thank you so much for joining us today, David. That was absolutely brilliant. Some really, really great information on a lot of different topics, and thank you for everyone for asking such great questions. Shall we leave it there, Naya and G?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, David, for coming on. That was a really great session. Yeah, really appreciate that. And thanks, Joanna, for setting it up as always.
Thank you.
No worries.
Right.
Loving the chat.
Right, guys, then everyone connect with me on LinkedIn as well. If you ever got any questions, then just send it me. I'm usually chock-a-block, but I'll get back to you when I can.
Oh, thank you, David. Yeah, we'll share all the handles, all the links in the Slack channels for everyone.
Perfect.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.